Madam Speaker, I ask to address the House for 1 minute for the purposes of inquiring about next week's schedule.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
I thank the Speaker and yield to the gentleman from Maryland, the Majority Leader, for the purpose of announcing next week's schedule.
I thank the Republican whip for yielding. On Monday, the House will meet at 12:30 p.m. for morning hour debate and 2 p.m. for legislative business, with votes postponed until 6 p.m. On Tuesday, Madam Speaker, the House will meet at 10:30 a.m. for morning hour debate and 12 p.m. for legislative business. Wednesday and Thursday, the House will meet at 10 a.m. for legislative business, and on Friday, the House will meet at 9 a.m. for legislative business. We will consider several bills under suspension of the rules. A complete list of all suspension bills will be announced by the close of business tomorrow. In addition, we'll consider Mr. Taylor's bill, H.R. 1264, the Multiple Peril Insurance Act of 2009. We're also expecting to consider several items from the Senate, including Senate amendments to H.R. 4213, the Restoration of Emergency Unemployment Compensation Act, and Senate amendments to H.R. 4899, the Supplemental Appropriations Act of 2010. Lastly, Madam Speaker, we expect to consider several bills addressing the oil spill and the Gulf, including H.R. 2693, the Oil Pollution Research and Development Program Reauthorization Act, and H.R. 5716, the Safer Oil and Natural Gas Drilling Technology Research and Development Act. And I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. And Madam Speaker, given the schedule the gentleman just announced, I'd ask the Majority Leader whether he expects the House to be in session next Friday.
I say to the gentleman that will again depend upon what our colleagues in the Senate send over to us and whether or not we can complete the business that we have before us that I've announced, can complete that by Thursday. In the event that we don't have legislation coming back from the Senate that we need to deal with on Friday, or our business that is scheduled does not take longer than Thursday, then it is possible that we would not be in session. But again, I would caution members that we have 2 weeks left to go, and those days will be scheduled and will be utilized if needed.
I thank the gentleman. And Madam Speaker, the gentleman just explained that we do only have 2 more weeks left in the month of July for legislative business, and would ask the gentleman if he could expand upon the schedule for those 2 weeks and what we might expect for those following weeks. And I yield.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. In addition to the bills that we've already mentioned for next week, including the unemployment extension and the supplemental coming from the Senate, the science and technology bills addressing the oil spill will also likely consider a number of other bills addressing oil spill legislation. In addition, I expect we will consider several bills from the Appropriations Committee. I've talked to the chairman about which bills would be most likely for floor action before August, and he's looking at the Veterans and Military Construction and the Transportation HUD bills. As the gentleman, I'm sure, knows, they have marked up now 7, I believe, is the accurate number, 7 appropriation bills, or excuse me, I think it's 9 because they marked up 2 today, or in the process of marking up today. And I expect by the end of the day there will have been 9 appropriation bills marked up. They will proceed, but I think those 2 bills are probably the first ones that will come forward. Yield back.
I thank the gentleman, Madam Speaker, and I'd ask if those appropriations bills coming to the floor will be brought up under an open rule. I yield.
I have not yet. Those bills, as you know, have not been reported out of committee yet, and I have not discussed with the chairman his plans on how he would hope to bring those to the floor. I will be discussing it with him probably the latter part of next week, and perhaps we'll have more information for you next week. Again, we expect the bills to come to the floor not next week, but the week after.
I thank the gentleman. Madam Speaker, the gentleman mentioned the troop funding and the schedule for next week. I know that originally the goal was to fund our troops by Memorial Day. That didn't happen. Then it became the goal of July 4th, and that didn't happen. And I know that the gentleman and I are both committed to getting this critical funding for our men and women in uniform. I would just suggest to the gentleman it is probably the most direct route to getting our mutual goal accomplished of getting this bill across the floor, that perhaps he and the majority ought to consider taking up the Senate-passed legislation and send it right to the President. I could say, Madam Speaker, to the gentleman that the Senate bill does have 218 votes on this House floor, and would ask if the supplemental is coming to the House floor next week, whether that is his intention to go ahead, take this route, expedite it so our troops can get the money they need. And I yield.
I thank the gentleman for his question and for his observation and for his assurances as well in terms of the number of votes we may have available for that alternative. I say to the gentleman that it is my intention that certainly by the time we leave here that we will have made sure that the troops have the resources they need to prosecute the mission that we have given them as a Congress and the administration. There's no doubt that we will have 218 plus, large plus, I think, of votes to accomplish that objective. As the gentleman knows, however, we have passed a supplemental which does fund the troops. It wasn't the Senate supplemental. The House obviously has its own view on policy, and I'm sure the gentleman would want the House to prosecute its policies and redeem the majority of the House's view and try to reach agreement with the Senate. The House acted on the supplemental before the break, including all of the President's requests for troop funding, as the gentleman knows. It also included the administration's request for FEMA, Haiti, oil spill, and border security. In addition, as the gentleman knows, we added money to take care of almost 140,000 teachers and offset the additional money with spending cuts, so that was not, this were paid for. I'm hopeful that the Senate will not make significant changes to the bill in the House, that the House passed, and will be able to pass that bill before the August work period begins. Again, however, I want to emphasize that I am fully committed and intend to ensure that the troops have the resources they need. With respect to the gentleman's observation, he's absolutely correct. I was hopeful we would do it before Memorial Day, and then I was hopeful that we would do it before the July 4th break. Interestingly enough, however, as we kept going along and I kept in contact with the chairman of the Defense Appropriations Committee, Mr. Dix, as to when the funding was needed. The date kept moving, and the date that we now have, as the gentleman probably knows as well as I do, is August 7th. But certainly I want to see us pass the funding for the troops and for the prosecution of the effort that the Congress has supported and the administration has set forth for our troops prior to that time.
I thank the gentleman, and I know the gentleman is in receipt of the same information that I am about the urgency now being communicated to us for the need for that money to be delivered. I would say, Madam Speaker, probably have a little different view as to the intentions of the Senate to try and deliver on stripping out the House amendments that were attached to the supplemental bill, and would say again to the gentleman, House Republicans stand ready to vote in an expeditious way on the Senate-passed bill in its original form, and look forward to being able to deliver that.
Well, my friend, yield.
Gentleman, yield.
I thank you for that that effort, and we'll look forward to working with you to make sure that our troops are fully funded.
I thank the gentleman. Madam Speaker, as we're discussing the schedule for next week, I believe it's important to announce the 8th UCUT vote that will take place on the House floor next week. Over 1.3 million votes have been cast on UCUT to date at the republicanwhip.house.gov/UCUT website. We will vote sometime midweek on one of the 5 proposals selected by the people of America. First would be one to eliminate mandatory GPO bill printing, which is a $35 million savings. Another would be to eliminate Senator Dodd's health care clinic earmark in the Obamacare health care bill, estimated to save another $100 million. Next would be, Madam Speaker, an effort to prohibit subsidies for long-distance first-class sleeper train tickets, estimated at a cost savings of $1.2 billion. Another, Madam Speaker, could be the Reform the Energy Star program effort, which requires companies to pay for the cost of the program, saving the taxpayers $655 million. Another could be, depending on the vote and will of the American people, an effort to prevent LIHEAP payments to fraudulent claims, an estimated savings of hundreds of millions of dollars to the taxpayer, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, I would say the gentleman's party has been extolling the virtues of cutting $7 billion from the President's $1.12 trillion FY11 budget. $7 billion. And I'd say to the gentleman, I know we've had a lot of discussion about UCUT and the amount of money that we are attempting to cut from the federal deficit through our program. And in fact, at this point, that total is now reaching $130 billion. And I know that many in his party have been dismissive of this program, saying that that's not real money in Washington. And I'll just point out to the gentleman, if individuals on his side of the aisle think that $7 billion reaches a significant milestone, I would say as well $130 billion of proposed cuts would do just as well, or not, if not better. So, Madam Speaker, I would like to, at that point, take a quick moment to congratulate someone who works together with our staff tirelessly behind the scenes, someone on the staff of the Majority Leader, Austin Burns, who got a moment to get away from the floor prior to the recess and to attend his own wedding. And we would wish the gentleman great success and best wishes in his nuptials.
Will the gentleman yield?
I yield.
We have a very strict leave policy in my office, but we were convinced that getting off for his wedding was an appropriate use of that leave. So we did. And Austin is, we're a wonderful member of the staff. I'm very pleased that you mention it. He has a wonderful new bride. His demeanor has changed markedly. He's much happier, and we're all happier to work with him. So, Austin, congratulations to you.
Well, I'm told and hopeful as well there'll be many more nuptials on your staff, I would say to the gentleman. And with that, Madam Speaker, I yield back.